Now, in my opinion, the world has totally slept on the FTX Tether connection. But with this finale episode of my 4-part series on FTX, I will add the final pieces to the puzzle that reveals a very shocking truth. So grab a fork and a knife to cut open this feast of a finale episode in this crazy series. And I know you're gonna enjoy it because I had a ton of fun researching and bringing it to you myself. So let's get ready for Christmas and wrap this thing up with a friggin' bow. But before we give you that gift, make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure you hit subscribe. Boom! Bang on that notification bell. Comment anything that you want in the relevant sections. I appreciate it. Now, let's see how truly tangled the web that they wove really is. So did you know that the FTX and Alameda bankruptcy process has revealed that these two companies had a total of 17 accounts at Deltec, which is in the Bahamas? Most of these accounts belonged to Alameda and contained large denominations of non-USD fiat currencies. Weird. Now, if you've been paying attention to this series, you'll know that Sam Bankman-Fried, aka the dude that's never had a good hair day, was technically in total control of Alameda despite his claims to the contrary. This raises the question of what exactly Sam was doing with all of those accounts at Deltec. The balance sheet of Moonstone Bank, which was formerly Farmington Bank, located in rural Washington state, may hold the clues to that question. And as you might remember, Moonstone never had more than a few $1,000,000 in customer deposits at any time. But in the third quarter of 2022, the bank's deposits exploded from $10 million to over $80 million, with $70 million of those dollars going into just 4 accounts. And it still remains unclear how a Bahamas-based company like FTX, with ongoing investigations by top financial watchdogs, was able to purchase a large stake in a federally approved bank. Huh? So you'll remember from my last episode, if you watched it of course, that FTX invested $11.5 million into Moonstone through Alameda. And if you're not caught up, I'd go watch those other 3 videos. So those 17 FTX accounts in Deltec were most likely just accounts for SBF's money laundering clients, and he was just washing their money through an entity that he thought would not raise red flags. And none other than the New York Times even did a piece looking into exactly this. And then they asked the following question: how can an offshore hedge fund that was essentially a crypto firm buy a stake in a tiny bank for multiples of its stated book value? And for its long and dark history of not the best journalism, the New York Times actually asked a great question here. How did an $11.5 million investment not raise massive red flags for US regulators such as the FDIC, the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions, the San Francisco Federal Reserve Branch, and the US Federal Reserve? Explain that. This actually starts to lead me to think that there were powers at work here that are much bigger than your garden variety money laundering syndicate like Jeffrey Epstein was a part of, right? And with that being sorted, I want to go ahead and crack open the shadowy next chapter of this tale. So let's get into the suspicious partnership between Moonstone and Fluent Finance, which was made shortly before FTX collapsed. It turns out that Oliver Gale, one of the co-founders of Fluent Finance, claimed to have invented central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. And what's interesting is that Oliver has reportedly had significant influence on the CBDC policy papers of central banks around the entire world. So Oliver's got the juice too. What's even more interesting is that Oliver believes that CBDCs should operate on public smart contract cryptocurrencies, but not private and permissioned blockchains. And to be clear, by public, I mean state-run, and by private, I mean not state-run. It's easy to get that confused. But anyway, the purpose of Fluent Finance is to accelerate crypto adoption by issuing a US plus stablecoin. What's concerning is that the US plus stablecoin is described by the company as being a de facto CBDC, given that it will have built-in digital identity standards. And this is wild for 2 different reasons. First, the World Economic Forum and others have actively promoted a so-called synthetic CBDC. And this would be a coin where the assets backing the stablecoin are directly held by the central bank. Makes sense. And second, and more importantly, SBF and his terrible hair had said that FTX was planning on launching its stablecoin in the not-so-distant future. So, I can't help but wonder whether this is why the powers that be decided to take down FTX and Alameda. But what powers specifically? Although we've been able to uncover a lot of the behind the scenes corruption, it does not provide a clear picture into why exactly Binance CEO CZ chose to sell FTT when he did. In order to know the true reason behind FTX's collapse and what could have motivated CZ, we would have to get inside his head, and that is just simply not possible. But let's assume that CZ was externally motivated to sell FTT when he did, and it was not just a de-risk as he said. Put simply, let's assume he was blackmailed into selling or just straight up paid. Assuming that, which I admit we don't know, I will tell you what I think is the most likely reason based on what I know and have presented to you in this entire series. One answer would be that Tether was not included in on FTX's stablecoin plans, and when Tether found out, they activated the nuclear option through CZ. The reason why I think that this is likely not true is that Tether would have not risked someone finding out that they were responsible for a major asset sell-off like that. There's just too much at risk in terms of bad PR. That leaves a much more sinister option though as the most likely scenario to me. I think that given the scale of the political donations that FTX was making and the connections to the world's most notorious convicted money laundering rings, SBF was actually a puppet. He was just a symbol of the woke tech CEO that was helping the SEC craft legislation for the future of crypto in the United States. Meanwhile, the deep state was using FTX and all of its hundreds of associated shell companies as a front for a giant money laundering scheme. Okay. A vessel for top American politicians and other shadowy figures to obtain the funds that they had earned in exchange for bribes and for all other ways that politicians have abused their power since the beginning of democracy. And I'm going to be clear with you, I certainly do not think SBF was innocent. I think he knew a lot about what was going on, but it was actually his parents, Joseph Bankman and Barbara Freid, who were well connected enough for big corrupt rings of people to see massive laundering potential inside of FTX. Now, I think SBF may have even started FTX as a well-intentioned crypto project from the beginning, but at some point sold his soul to the proverbial devil in exchange for his company being a tool of global criminals and his personal image being used to close giant investment deals and entice crypto enthusiasts to trust him with their funds. It's sad, it's disgusting, it sucks, but sometimes that's just how the real world works. I'm about 95% sure that this is an accurate description of what was really going on at FTX, but it really takes CZ off the hook and turns him into a massive hero. And maybe he is. It makes it seem like FTX, Moonstone, and the globalist deep state was ready to roll out a CBDC disguised as an FTX stablecoin, but then CZ saved us all with a single sell order and a tweet. Something about that doesn't really resonate well with me, but for now, that is what I think is the most likely story because it ties together all of the evidence tying FTX to known money launderers and lands us squarely in anticipation for a new CBDC to be rolled out in the United States and likely the entire Western world. So there it is, the FTX debacle update that everybody's been waiting for. Let me know what you think. And if you like series like this, make sure you go watch the previous videos and make sure you watch my other series. And obviously, make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure you hit subscribe, boom, bang on that notification bell. Comment anything that you want in the relevant sections. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for showing up to this video. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, everyone.